Welcome back to another story that will pull at your heart and challenge your mind. Here, we dive deep into real emotions, raw confessions, and moments that change lives forever. So sit back, take a breath, and let's begin. The rain hammered against the windshield like 1,000 tiny accusations as I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white against the worn leather. Seattle's perpetual drizzle had turned into a full-on deluge. The kind that floods the streets in Belltown and makes every pedestrian look like a drowned rat scurrying for cover. I was parked outside our condo on 2nd Avenue, the engine idling, while Taylor's voice crackled through the Bluetooth speaker, her words slicing through the static like a dull knife. "I don't know what you're talking about, Jordan. You're being paranoid again. It's just work stuff. Late nights at the office, you know how it is with the merger." Nanisayan. Her tone was too smooth, too rehearsed, laced with that Pacific Northwest politeness that masks everything from mild annoyance to outright lies. I could picture her in the hotel room in San Francisco, fiddling with her necklace, the one with the tiny jade pendant she'd bought at Pike Place Market on our third date. But my mind kept flashing to the email I'd found on her laptop earlier that evening, the one buried in a folder labeled Taxes 2021. It wasn't taxes. It was a string of messages from Evan, timestamps aligning perfectly with her business trips. The wipers swished back and forth, blurring the neon glow from the bar across the street where tech bros in hoodies nursed EPOS. My throat tightened, a familiar noose of anxiety pulling taut, my OCD kicking in, urging me to check the locks on the car doors 3 times. Even though I was inside. I hadn't confronted her yet, not fully. Instead, I muttered into the phone, "Taylor, the emails. I saw them. Can't wait to feel your skin again. That's not merger talk." Silence on the other end, broken only by the faint hum of a distant cable car, San Francisco's signature rattle. Then, a sigh, heavy with resignation. "Jordan, it's complicated. Can we talk when I get back? The flight's tomorrow." Complicated. The word hung there like the fog rolling in off Puget Sound, thick and impenetrable. I ended the call without another word, my heart pounding in rhythm with the rain. The chipped wedding band on my finger caught the dashboard light, its once smooth gold now marred by a deep scratch from when I'd slammed my hand against the kitchen counter last month during one of our arguments. It symbolized us now, worn down, imperfect, but still clinging on. Or so I thought. I stepped out into the storm, the cold water soaking through my flannel shirt instantly, mixing with the salty tang of Elliott Bay in the air. My sneakers squelched on the pavement as I headed toward the condo, the building's lobby smelling of wet dog and overbrewed coffee from the downstairs cafe. Upstairs, our place was a mess of half-unpacked boxes from when we'd moved in 2 years ago, right after the pandemic eased up in 2022. Taylor's marketing job had boomed with remote work, while my software engineering gig at a startup kept me chained to a home office, debugging code while foraging for wild mushrooms in Discovery Park on weekends to clear my head. That night I couldn't sleep. The bed felt too big without her, the sheets cool and uninviting. My mind raced back to how we'd met, 2018, at a craft beer festival in Portland, where I'd relocated for work. She was manning a booth for her company's promo, her laugh cutting through the crowd like a ray of sun in Oregon's misty autumn. I was 31 then, fresh off a string of failed dates, my synesthesia turning her voice into bursts of warm orange in my vision. We bonded over shared hikes in the Columbia River Gorge, her stories of growing up in a small immigrant enclave in Chicago's Little Village, where her Mexican-American family ran a taqueria. Taylor was 30, ambitious, with a subversive streak. She collected antique radios, tuning into obscure AM stations late at night, whispering conspiracy theories about government signals with a wink. But now those radios sat silent on the shelf, gathering dust. I paced the living room, the hardwood floors creaking underfoot, the scent of leftover pho from Finney Ridge takeout lingering in the air. My thoughts spiraled. Had the cheating started during her last trip to Austin for SXSW? Or earlier when she worked late, during Seattle's heat wave last summer, the one that pushed temps to 108 and made everyone cranky? I grabbed my laptop, fingers trembling as I dug deeper into her email. More messages, photos attached. Her and Evan at a vineyard in Napa, arms linked, smiles too intimate. The betrayal hit like a seismic shift, the kind Seattleites brace for with earthquake kits. Subtle signs I'd ignored flooded back. Changed passwords on our shared Netflix. Her sudden interest in wine-tasting classes without inviting me. The way she'd dodge questions about her days with a quick bless your heart deflection. Even though she wasn't Southern, she'd picked it up from colleagues. My body reacted viscerally, stomach churning like I'd eaten bad oysters from the market, palms sweaty despite the chill. By dawn, the rain had eased to a mist, the city awakening with the grind of buses on Pine Street and the aroma of fresh roasted coffee wafting from nearby roasteries. I sat at the kitchen island, staring at the chipped band, twisting it until my finger ached. This wasn't just a fling. It was erosion, trust crumbling like the unstable bluffs along the Sound. I texted her, "We need to talk, now." But deep down I knew divorce papers were on the horizon, the word tasting bitter, like over-extracted espresso. As the sun peeked through the clouds, casting a hazy light over the Space Needle in the distance, I felt a mix of rage and sorrow twisting in my chest. How had we gotten here? Flashing back to our wedding in 2020, a small ceremony in Olympic National Park amid COVID restrictions, vows exchanged under ancient cedars with the scent of pine resin thick in the air. Taylor had looked at me then with eyes full of promise, her hand in mine, the band shiny and new. But promises break. I headed out for a walk, the damp air clinging to my skin, seagulls crying overhead as ferries chugged across the bay. My phone buzzed, her reply. "On my way home. Let's fix this." Jeez. Like it was a buggy code I could debug. But some errors run too deep. 2 years earlier, 2020, right after our wedding. That's when the cracks first appeared, though I didn't see them then. We were holed up in our Portland apartment, the city locked down under COVID mandates, masks mandatory even for curbside pickups at Powell's Books. I just proposed during a hike in Forest Park, the trail muddy from spring rains, the air heavy with the earthy scent of ferns and Douglas fir. Taylor said yes with tears in her eyes, her laugh echoing like wind chimes. But now, flashing back from that rainy Seattle night in 2022, I remember the isolation hitting us hard. My startup job went fully remote, code reviews via Zoom, blurring into endless days. Taylor's marketing gigs dried up initially, then surged with virtual events. We spent evenings on the balcony sipping local Pinot Noir, watching the Willamette River flow lazily below, its surface rippling under the orange glow of sodium streetlights. One night, as thunder rumbled from an incoming storm, Portland's weather flipping from sunny to savage in minutes, she confessed something over dinner. We made tacos from her family's recipe, the sizzle of carne asada filling the kitchen with cumin and chili smoke, the heat making our foreheads glisten. "Jordan, I feel trapped sometimes," she said, her fork pausing midair. "Not with you, but this life. The pandemic's changed everything." I nodded, my synesthesia painting her words in shades of gray-blue, like the overcast skies. "Me too, but we have each other." I reached for her hand, feeling the smooth wedding band we'd exchanged just weeks before. No chip yet, pristine as our hopes. She pulled away gently, hesitating. "Evan from work. He's been checking in. Just friendly chats. Evan died." The name dropped like a pebble in a pond, ripples I ignored. He was her colleague, a slick account manager based in the Bay Area, always posting about wine country escapades on LinkedIn. I didn't think much of it then. We were all clinging to connections in quarantine. But looking back, That was the seed. Subtle betrayal starting with late-night texts, her screen lighting up while we binge-watched shows, the glow casting shadows on her face. The next day, we drove to Multnomah Falls. Masks on, the waterfall's roar drowning out conversations of other hikers. The mist sprayed our faces, cool and refreshing, mixing with the pine scent and distant barbecue smoke from picnickers. Taylor snapped photos on her phone, laughing as water droplets beaded on the lens. But her eyes darted to notifications. Evan again, probably. My OCD flared. I counted the steps up the trail, 87 to the viewpoint, repeating the number to calm the unease bubbling in my gut. "Everything okay?" I asked, voice muffled. "Yeah, dude. Just work drama," she replied, slipping into that casual California lingo she'd adopted from virtual meetings with West Coast clients. Subtext heavy. Don't push. We returned home as dusk fell, the city's bridges lighting up like Christmas strains over the river. That night, intimacy felt forced, her touch distant, like she was going through motions. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling fan whirring lazily, the hum vibrating through my chest. The band on my finger felt heavier, a symbol of commitment now tinged with doubt. Months blurred. Summer brought wildfires, ash falling like dirty snow, the air acrid and thick, forcing us indoors with air purifiers humming. Taylor's chats with Evan escalated. I'd overhear snippets during her calls, her voice softening in ways it hadn't with me lately. "You're, hilarious," she'd say, a giggle escaping. One evening, during a power outage from a storm, candles flickering, casting dancing shadows on walls adorned with her antique radios, I confronted her mildly. "You talk to him a lot." She shrugged, popping a cork on a bottle of Willamette Valley Red, the pop echoing. "He's a friend, Jordan. Helps with stress. You forage mushrooms to unwind, I chat." Fair point. My urban foraging hobby took me to Washington Park, hunting morels amid the rose gardens, the soil damp under my knees, earthy aroma grounding me. But her words stung, a subtle erosion, implying my coping was solitary, hers communal. By fall as leaves turned fiery orange along the waterfront, we'd moved to Seattle for my job promotion. Packing boxes, I found an old radio she'd tuned to static. Claiming it cleared her mind. The move felt like a fresh start, new city, new condo with views of Mount Rainier on clear days, which were rare. But Evan lingered in the background, virtual happy hours turning into private messages. Flashing forward in my mind to that 2022 rain-soaked night, I see how those early betrayals built like layers of sediment, changed streaming logins, she'd forgotten to share the new password, ignored suggestions for date nights, like hiking in the Olympics where we'd wed. The chipped band got its first nick during the move, when a box slipped, symbolizing the shift from unity to fracture. In Portland, we'd attended a virtual group therapy for pandemic stress, sharing vulnerabilities over Zoom. My OCD rituals, her fears of stagnation. "Forgiveness starts with honesty," the facilitator said, voice tinny through speakers. Taylor nodded, but her eyes were elsewhere. Now, in hindsight, that was the prelude to cheating, emotional first, then physical during trips. Divorce loomed, but back then, hope flickered like those outage candles. 3 months after that Seattle confrontation in 2022, jumping ahead to winter, snow blanketing the Cascades, but in the city, it was just slushy streets and the bite of wind off Lake Union. We'd separated temporarily. Taylor crashed with a friend in Capitol Hill, her stuff in storage pods. I stayed in the condo, the space echoing with absence, the antique radios she'd left behind silent sentinels on the shelves. The major turning point hit during a freak ice storm, the kind that shuts down Seattle. Power lines sagging under frozen weight, the crunch of salt under tires as plows struggled. I'd been foraging alone in Ravenna Park, bundled in layers, the crisp air stinging my nostrils, mingled with the faint smoke from neighborhood fireplaces. My boots crunched through frosted leaves, revealing hidden chanterelles, their golden caps a burst of color in the monochrome landscape. Returning home, fingers numb, I found a package at the door, an anonymous envelope, no return address. Inside, printouts of chat logs from a VR app I'd never heard of, Echorealm, where users met in virtual worlds. Taylor's avatar linked to Evan, timestamps during her trips. But the twist, it wasn't just texts, transcripts of virtual encounters, intimate and immersive, during last summer's wildfires when she'd evacuated to California for safety. The discovery floored me, cheating in a metaverse, blurring lines between digital and real. My synesthesia turned the words into jagged red spikes, piercing. The chipped band, now with a second dent from slamming it against the counter, symbolized betrayal's evolution, from emotional drift to simulated affairs. I called her, voice shaking as sleet pelted the windows. What the hell is Echorealm? Virtual sex with Evan? No. Pause, then her voice hesitant. Jordan, it started as escape. The fires last year, smoke choking everything, evacuations chaotic. Evan invited me to the app. It was harmless at first. Harmless. Like the subtle betrayals before. Her ignoring my texts during meetings, the way she'd change subjects with a bless your heart when I asked about her day. We met at a neutral spot, a coffee shop in Fremont, the troll sculpture looming nearby under gray skies. The aroma of espresso and fresh pastries clashed with the tension. My latte steamed, but I couldn't taste it, throat tight. She arrived, coat dusted with flurries, eyes red-rimmed. I didn't mean for it to go this far. The VR, it felt safe, not real. Nee, in our is say, so. But it was, I countered, interrupting, my words sharp. You chose him over us. Dialogue heavy with subtext, her apologies laced with defensiveness, mine with hurt. You were always so structured, Jordan. Your OCD lists, foraging schedules. Evan lets me be free. Free. The word echoed like the distant fairy horns. Sensory overload, the shop's chatter, clinking mugs, the warmth contrasting the cold outside. That night alone, I twisted the band, feeling its imperfections. Flashback to 2021, mid-pandemic shift, when we'd road trip to Yellowstone. Geysers erupting in steamy plumes, bison grazing amid sulfur scents. Taylor had confessed vulnerabilities then. About her family's immigration struggles. How she felt rootless. I'd shared my synesthesia, how sounds became colors, making code debugging a visual puzzle. But now, post-turning point, divorce proceedings started. Lawyers in downtown offices, the scent of polished wood and stale coffee, papers shuffling. Emotional nuance, exhilaration at potential freedom mixed with dread of loneliness. Winter dragged. Holiday lights twinkled on Pike Street, but our Thanksgiving was separate, me at a potluck with coworkers, turkey dry, conversations awkward. Taylor texted, "Miss the old us." Me too. But trust eroded like the bluffs during storms. Flashing back 1 year before the ice storm Discovery, to 2021 Seattle summer. Heat dome baking the city, temps soaring, air shimmering like a mirage over asphalt. We just settled into the condo, boxes unpacked amid fans whirring against the humidity, unusual for the Northwest. Wildfires raged east, smoke haze turning sunsets blood red, the acrid tang infiltrating everything, even our clothes. Taylor's trips ramped up. Client meetings in Cali, she'd say, packing with a kiss. Subtle betrayals mounted. She'd return with new wines, stories vague. Evan says this vintage is killer, slipping out once. I foraged in the arboretum, sweat beading, the rustle of leaves underfoot, birdsong piercing the haze. My mind wandered, internal storm brewing, body tense like coiled wire. One evening, power flickering from grid strain, we argued. You're distant, I said, voice rising over the hum. I'm stressed. Fires everywhere. Evacuations threatened. She left for safety in San Fran, where Evan waited. That's when VR cheating began. I later learned. Virtual vineyards, digital touches feeling real. Back then, ignorance bliss. We reconciled post-trip, intimacy reignited amid cooling rains. But the band chipped during a hike in Issaquah, symbolizing growing fractures. Emotional conflict, love persisting amid doubt, exhilaration in moments, dread lurking. 6 months after the divorce finalized in spring 2023, jumping forward, Seattle blooming with cherry blossoms in the U District, petals drifting like confetti, the sweet scent mixing with food truck aromas. I lived alone, the condo sold, in a smaller place near Green Lake. Foraging became therapy, mushrooms sprouting after rains, earthy smells grounding me. Taylor and I crossed paths at a mutual friend's barbecue, smoke from the grill, laughter over burgers, the lake's waves lapping. Awkward, she said, approaching holding a craft beer. Yeah. Dialogue sparse, subtext rich, unspoken regrets. She'd ended it with Evan. VR illusions crumbled. I messed up, she admitted, voice soft. Forgiveness tentative. Redemption in friendship possible? We talked vulnerabilities, my OCD easing with therapy, her seeking roots in Chicago visits. The chipped band, now in a drawer, symbolized past pain, but perhaps healing. Hopeful yet uncertain as we parted with a hug, the city's buzz alive around us. Life moved on, new dates, but echoes remained. Betrayal scarred, but growth emerged, like fungi after fire. Every story leaves its mark, and this one is no different. If it touched you, made you think, or stirred something inside, don't forget to subscribe and join us for more. Until next time, take care of your heart.